Hello, today I'm here with e.e.cummings If Everything Happens That Cannot Be Done. This poem, like many other poems written by this poet, is about a common topic. E.e.cummings wanted to turn poetry back to the everyday life, and he talks about the common emotions, the common experiences of mankind. However, he did that in a strange way. He, at the same time that he wanted to talk to the ordinary people with a kind of colloquial everyday language, he wanted to start a conversation with the traditional poetry. So he somehow rejected many of those traditions and relied on some others to show a new trend, a new kind of avant garde poetry. So his topics are ordinary ones. At the same time, his poetry becomes sometimes complicated and rather difficult to comprehend because of the complications or the sophistications of the form. e.e.cummings preferred to write his name in this way, in short letters. So he also kind of rejected the traditions or the conventions of the identity. He didn't like to be identified in the traditional manner, and he didn't choose titles for his poems, and it's this made actually this made it difficult for the publishers to publish his books, to edit his books. Therefore, to make his poems more, let's say, textually readable, they considered the first line of the poems as the title of them, like this one, If Everything Happens That Can't Be Done. Let's go to the text of the poem and read it once, and we have to turn back to the poem and read throughout the poem, throughout the text of the poem for several times to understand his purposes. To read the poem in the traditional way would be like this. If everything happens that can't be done, and anything's righter than books could pen, the stupidest teacher will almost guess. With a run, skip around, we go, yes. There is nothing as something as one. One hasn't a why or because or although, and buts no better than books don't grow. One's anything old being everything new. With a what which around we come who. One's every anything so. So world is a leaf, so a tree is a bough, and birds sing sweeter than books tell how. So here is a way, and so your is a my, with a down, up, around again, fly, forever was never till now. Now I love you and you love me, and books are shorter than books can be, and deep in the high that does nothing but fall, with a shout each around we go, oh, there is somebody calling who is we. We are anything brighter than even the sun. We are everything greater than books might mean. We are every anything more than belief, with a spin, leap, alive. We are alive. We are wonderful one times one. We can barely guess, okay, that the poem is about maybe two people who love one another, but there are parenthetical kind of details in the poem, and there are also other topics introduced in the poem. So this was not the right way of reading this poem. The poem has actually a formula. Let us now read the lines which are outside the parentheses one by one, one after another. If everything happens that can't be done, the stupidest teacher will almost guess there is nothing as something as one. So if things go as they should, even the stupidest teacher would know that there is nothing as one. Being one is the most important one. And we have a kind of dialogue or conversation between teaching and nature, between culture and nature, what we learn from a teacher, and what we can learn from our nature and also the external nature. Uh, let's continue and notice that you might have noticed in the previous reading that the last word of the last line of this stanza is repeated as the first word of the first line of the next stanza. This pattern continues throughout the poem. One hasn't a why or because or although. One's anything old being everything new. He means that being one is always new, it always refreshes itself. One's everything, every anything. So there we had anything and everything here. And when we have a one, we have the same word, so we have every anything. So, and then he starts this first line with so world as a leaf, so tree as a bough. Our world is a big one, as a general entity, is the universe, and a leaf is a small particle in this universe. He means that we can see the whole world in that leaf. So we have this kind of relationship of the whole to the parts, and their interrelationship and their completion. So, and then we have the opposite kind of relationship in the next part. So a tree is a bough, and again a tree is its part. So this is if the world has unity, so here is a way. So there is no here and a way. All those dichotomies, polarities are rejected, and so your is a my, and these are all the conditions of loving someone. Forever was never till now. This sentence, forever was never till now, is somehow paradoxical when we read it, but it makes sense. Forever was never till now, that we are happy together, so we experience eternity. And eternity is not naturally, eternity is another time, but now we are together, so now is eternity. This is paradoxical, but we know what it means. We have felt it, that you feel that you're at the end of the time, that there is nothing in this world that can make you happier more than this love. And now I love you and you love me. So all of these are happening because now I love you and you love me. And you see, he doesn't capitalize I. And deep in the high that does nothing but fall. And deep in the high that does nothing but fall might seem again paradoxical. We have an example of oxymoron here, deep and high, for example. But what does he mean, deep in the high? Can we be deep in the high? Actually, he is referring, so here we have an allusion to the story of Adam and Eve, and deep in the high is actually the Garden of Eden, deep in the high state of the heavens, deep in the high that does nothing but fall. And the fall from that heavenly state because of the love between Adam and Eve, and deep in the high that does nothing but fall. So we are the offsprings of that first love. There is somebody calling who is we, and now we are fall, and we have experienced the fall like Adam and Eve, and we fall in love. There is somebody calling who's we. Now at first it was I and you. In the last part we have the we here, and we're anything brighter than even the sun. We are every anything more than belief. We are wonderful, one times one. So there's also a one hidden here in the wonderful, and we know in mathematics, when we actually we write one time one, the result is also one. So one times one is one. So this was the first reading of the poem. We read the lines which were outside the parentheses, but we have two parenthetical parts in each stanza. let us turn back to the beginning of the poem and read these pink parenthetical lines. And anything's righter than books could plan. These parts are about education, so about their nature and then its opposition to education and learning. And anything's writer, we know that in ordinary English speech we don't use writer, but we also know it is correct grammatically speaking. So, and e.e.cummings is actually is using the treasures and what is the potentials of English language, and anything's brighter than books could plan. And the second parenthetical statement, and buds know better than books don't grow. If you like to know about the growth of the buds, don't go to books and read about them. Go to nature and really watch them. So he's trying to make such a statement here. But we have to know that when we read E. Cummings, we can never talk for certain about his topics and subject matters. The words are turning us or taking us somewhere, and we can guess with a state of probability. Uh, and birds sing sweeter than books tell how. Again, we have the same kind of implication. And books are shorter than books can be. So if nature is righter than the books, it is better to make the books shorter than nature. Again, we don't use shorter in this way in this spelling in English, but it is not incorrect. And finally, we are everything greater than books might mean. And then in the last stanza, he connects that subject matter to the general subject matter, which was the we, or the subject matter of the poem, which was love. And you see many of the lines in this last part begin with we, we're, and we're. This is called anaphora, when we start some lines, some consecutive lines with the same word or statement, or uh, some consecutive sentences with the same word again, or in different forms of language and writing. This is called anaphora, the most famous anaphora in English language or in English literature, or I don't know. In English usages, maybe I have a dream part of Martin Luther King's speech, famous speech. He started 6 consecutive sentences with "I have a dream." Anyway, now let us go to the first part of the poem and read its last parenthetical statement with a run, skip around, we go, yes. This part, the green part in each stanza, is about dancing. The two people, it seems that they are dancing, and we have some forms and some words used which are related to dance, whether as if two people are dancing a ballet or a tango. With a run, skip around, we go, yes. With a what, which, around, we come who. When they are dancing together, they become who they are. They become one. With a down, up, around, again, fly. And if they fall from heaven, they can fly together on earth. Over the shout each around we go. Oh, when you might have watched it, that when two people are dancing and they are dancing so rapidly and fast, we cannot distinguish one from the other, and when they are just moving around, spinning around, so we go, oh, they become we. In that way we cannot distinguish the two people. And finally, with a spin, leap, alive, we're alive. And you see, there are two lives here. And sometimes we can see some symmetrical patterns in the poem. So this is like this one, that they are mirroring one another as they are dancing. This was the reading of the poem, but technically speaking, we call such a poem a kind of avant-garde poetry. Avant-garde means advanced guard, and some avant-garde poets lived at the beginning of the 20th century and the time of modernism. So the avant-garde movement is considered to be a prominent feature of modernism, and it is taken from the French language as a military metaphor, which means advanced guard. Um, and when we want to categorize the avant-garde artist, we can consider some specifications and characteristics. They violated the accepted conventions and properties of art, like what e.e.cummings did here. He didn't consider that, for example, on a poem, we don't use parenthetical statements. We are not supposed to read a poem in that way. A poem should have a title line, but E. Cummings didn't consider that as well. He didn't consider the grammatical rules of English language. He didn't consider the kind of the general rules of language, like not using writer or shutter. And they set out to create ever new artistic forms and styles. If you read E. Cummings, you see that no two of his poems are similar to one another. I have another video on E. Cummings. You can check out that video as well. I put the link here, and they try to introduce neglected or forbidden subject matters, or neglected subject matter can be considered here, which is love. And the features of avant-garde poetry or art, the avant-garde artist is alienated from the established order, like what E. Cummings did with the order of established forms of poetry. They assert their autonomy against the established conventions. They try to be original, we can say, and their poems or their works of art are not similar to any other person. A prominent aim is to shock the sensibilities of the conventional reader, or at least they surprise us, like what E. Cummings did here. We do not expect a poem to be read like this, a poem to be written even typographically on the on the paper as he did. They intend to challenge the norms of the dominant bourgeois culture. So they kind of distinguish between elite art and the ordinary people's kind of art, or the art that ordinary people may like. So thank you very much for listening. I hope I can see you in my next videos.